Happy Wednesday, everybody. Welcome to NHL Tonight, first shift. If you're looking for EJ and Connie, well, you're out of luck. They're on a bird across the Atlantic, heading over to Finland to call the Global Series coming up.
That'll be fun. I'm anxious to watch that call. Watch those games and watch that call. Those will be some good matches.
Yeah, those games coming up on Friday and Saturday. You're stuck with us, Stu Grimson, Jamison Coyle. Happy to be with you. You're the veteran on this show. You've done it once.
Not very often I outrank you on this network, but I got dibs
I'm
here.
I'm going to ride your coattails this afternoon.
There you go. Feel free to break out of the host role exclusively. Analyze, because you know the game as well as anybody up here that talks about it.
All right. I'm going to go teacher mode then. Pop quiz to start this show. You okay with that?
Yeah, okay.
Got a couple of jerseys hanging here.
Well, I count four.
Yes, there's a couple. That is a couple.
That's not part of the pop?
No, that's not part of the pop. But this is what theme do we have going on back there? Can you put it all together?
Well, it could be a Grimson theme.
Might be a Grimson thing.
Those are all four of my jerseys.
Yeah.
That was the first thing that came to my mind.
Okay, so you're thinking about it.
Hang on.
No, you're right on. You're right on. Couple of the teams you played for. We only have room for four and stuff. So
there's a Carolina hat up top.
Well, the hats don't mean much.
And there's a Nashville hat over on the side too. But yeah, what is this? Some kind of a?
No, it's
the backdrop.
We're decorating.
Yes,
we're rolling out the red carpet for you.
I had a ball playing, and
are those the four that you would hang if we only have four hooks? So of all the sweater, I mean, I'd love to see the Whaler in here. Right?
The whale would be great. I mean, you don't have enough hooks. The Blackhawks, it's one of the strongest brands in all of pro hockey for certain.
Is that like ranking your kids though? Like when you're talking about teams and organizations you've played for, like which is your favorite? Is it like, I like my oldest son better than my youngest? Or for me, it's day to day. I can rank them definitely. My kids.
The places that really, I mean, I could go back and I could say something really significant about each of these jerseys. Was a Stanley Cup finalist when I was with Detroit. The Kings were a really special year for me for the following reason. Like, hockey players, the fit is optimal, right? We're always asking guys that go to new teams, what's the fit like? What's that going to be?
Why'd you choose there? Yeah.
And I got Andy Murray, our coach, gave me so much responsibility. We had a great group of veterans. We weren't the most talented bunch in the league, but we took the Colorado Avalanche to the conference final that year, or just about got to the conference final. Colorado ultimately beat us out, and not a lot of people had high hopes for us. Knocked off the Detroit Red Wings, who were formidable back then, in the first round that year. So that was a good fit. LA was just a great season, my one season with the Kings.
Awesome. If I had it my way, it'd be the Whalers jersey and just Brass Bonanza on loop for the next 60 minutes, but I digress. You ready to kick things off here?
Let's do it. We got lots to get to, my friend.
All right, let's do it. Let's start with maybe the most important and certainly the most pressing in oil country. How about this? Whew! Sigh of relief here. Oilers captain Connor McDavid sustained an ankle injury during Monday's game in Columbus. Expected to return to action in 2 to 3 weeks. McDavid only playing the first shift, 37 seconds in that 6-1 loss to Columbus earlier this week. A lot of people thought, there was speculation. How long is this going to be? Will this be detrimental to the entire season? It looks like they've averted disaster here. 2 to 3 weeks, A-OK for number 97.
Yeah, all indications are, and this is a pretty good look at it, but when you get a chance, just as he goes to the wall on this one, he kind of loses his footing, I think, because he kind of engages with a defender from Columbus. But you can see that left foot kind of gets tangled up. He's off his edge, actually kind of gets teetered over onto one edge, the outside edge. And I think watch here, he jams up that left skate towards the boards, and I think he torques that ankle a little bit. So, yeah, that's, of course, the doctors are telling us 2 to 3 weeks. I'm sure that's what's informed the press release by the Edmonton Oilers, JMO. I will say, though, and not to be, the pessimist, the fatalist.
I know where you're going with this. High ankle sprain, right?
Ankles are tricky, and especially if we're dealing with a high ankle sprain.
You ever had one?
Never have. Any athlete that's been through it, and the doctors will often tell you, you're almost better to break than you are to, it's at least a serious high ankle sprain, because they become really tricky to overcome.
The whole year, right?
There's so much because we're in a skate with a blade on the bottom, there's just so much you do for balance, for acceleration, for stability in that part of the body. It just puts a lot of strain on that joint specifically. So let's we root for the health of all players, as our good friend Tony Leffman always says, and I suspect a quick turnaround, because this is a super high functioning athlete we're talking about.
Fingers
here.
crossed. I mean, it's good for the game when 97's on the ice doing what he does
100%.
best. So 2 to 3 weeks, maybe 3 to 6 games, give or take, based on the Oilers' schedule. Their schedule, they do have 2 more games coming up left on that road trip there in Nashville coming up on Thursday. Then they finish things up on the road in Calgary. Always fun for the Battle of Alberta on Sunday. Without Connor McDavid, going back to 2021, 2022, look, the numbers are what you'd expect them to be. 2-5-1, not as many goals, and the power play not as efficient. They do still have Leon Draisaitl, one of the best players that we have in the NHL, but this team drastically different without 97 on the ice. How do you think they fare as they sit 4-5-1 right now on the season? Slow start, but it looked like they had started to figure things out.
It looks like they're starting to coalesce. Certainly looks like they're not going to go through that calamity that they went through in the opening month and a half last year. So, those were really positive indications. Not the most favorable schedule. They've got a couple of, what you might call, more winnable games. Anaheim, Nashville in a bit of a funk right now themselves, but there are some daunting opponents there on the tail end of that 2-week frame we're showing you. I will say, though, the way this club is built, JMO, even without Connor McDavid, you can kind of see, the constructs of a plan, a path to kind of get through this, and maybe not even have to tread water 500 hockey, maybe play some 550, 575 hockey. Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, Leon Draisaitl, Adam Henrique, just to kind of look at this roster from a forward position down the middle. You've got something on paper there that probably looks stronger, deeper than half to 40% of the rest of the clubs in the league. This is still a well-constructed forward core. You're never going to replace Connor McDavid, but you can structure things in such a way that you're going to bide some time until 97's back in the mix.
Certainly other guys can step up as well. You got a guy like Zach Hyman, who had an all-world season last year and then led the team in the playoffs in scoring. He hasn't quite gotten it going just yet. So if he can get it going, they can kind of keep it afloat for the next 2 weeks. They do have 7 games in the next 15 days. So busy schedule for the Oilers coming up without number 97. Hey, speaking of big games, how about the one last night in Pittsburgh? Marc-Andre Fleury, maybe his final game in Pittsburgh. Flowers for the Flower. There it is pre-game with a bunch of his former teammates there. Look, this guy is beloved in the Steel City. A ton of signs saying, thank you, Flower. Like, you're the reason I'm a goalie, or wanted to become a goalie and whatnot. And Hollywood couldn't have scripted this one any better. Got off to a slow start in this game, but then really settled in. He gets the first star of the game. They're chanting Fleury, Fleury in the post game. It's just, like I said, made for a movie.
Poetry on ice, I think, is the best way for me to describe it, because it really was a wonderful script and well played. Flower has. Here's the thing. Yes, Pittsburgh has a very soft spot in their hearts. Pittsburgh fans do for the Flower, given all he accomplished while a member of that organization. But looking at it more broadly, like, just such a great ambassador for our game, such a great citizen to our game. This guy could have fun in a phone booth. He never has a bad word to say about anybody. He is the same person every day he comes down to the rink, and that is just chock full of enthusiasm, a high level of professionalism and consistency at the same time, which is really very hard to do, and frankly, part of why folks tend to ride these up and downs, these mood swings from time to time, because the game can be a pressure cooker at times. But Fleury is the same guy day in, day out, and just such a great teammate. Such a great role model for our game, and I think True does embody, the essence, the character of hockey players generally: fun, and really humble.
Always does it with a smile on his face.
Sure does.
And he's
Sure
certainly made a
does.
name for himself. Reputation precedes himself as a prankster. And they got him back last night. Max Talbot, former teammate when he was with the Penguins, had a little
Yeah.
fun taping up his pants and stuff after the morning skates. So
Yeah.
once a prankster, always a prankster.
Oh, it never leaves you.
You give it out, you better receive it too.
And there's one on every team, and Fleury has been that guy on
Yeah.
every team. But he brings out the best in the rest of the club. And listen, let's face
And the
it.
club's rolling right now.
Yeah, but the point I wanted to make there, we talk about this all the time. It's an 82-game schedule. There are those dog days. There are those slumps for just about, for just about every team that takes to the ice in the NHL. You need a guy like that that can be the comic relief from time to time, and you'd be amazed at the difference it can make in getting through that slog and being competitive as you can be when you've got a Marc-Andre Fleury as part of the mix.
And it helps when that guy's a 3-time Stanley Cup champion and future Hall of Famer.
Doesn't hurt
as well,
that you're
right?
good at the same
Yeah,
time.
a little bit of both.
I'm here to tell you that.
Yes, awesome. That was Game 7 of the 7-game road trip from Minnesota. 5-1-1. They're one of the
Yeah.
best teams right now in
Good
the
for them.
NHL.
Good
Hey,
for
speaking of good teams, maybe the biggest surprise in the NHL right now, you tell me if I'm wrong, the Washington Capitals.
Yeah.
Like with the way that they've started year 2 under Spencer Carberry, Ovi's starting to heat things up, so the Gretzky watch is getting a little bit interesting. And they beat one of the top teams in the NHL in the New York Rangers last night in convincing fashion, 5-3. Ovi with 2 goals in that win. He's up to 857 now, 37 goals away from tying Gretzky's all-time mark. We're getting there.
Yeah,
We're getting there.
We really are. And if you think about it, did you say this already? He didn't register his 8th until January
No, we didn't
1st.
talk about last year. The
Yeah.
slowest of slow starts for Alex Ovechkin.
And he still finished at 30. So the point I want to make there is he's 4 goals in, 8 games in. That's a 40-goal pace. I mean, and just think about the way he finished last year. You could make an argument
Are
for
you saying he's
North.
doing? Are you saying he's doing it this year?
I'm saying there's a very good chance, especially the way this club is playing right now. But let's go back to kind of looking at this season prospectively, forward-looking last year. We're all kind of talking about Washington. Yes, the Metro's kind of up for grabs outside of Jersey, outside of the Rangers. It looks like a bit of a mixed bag for Washington, given what we saw last year and Ovi's lackluster start. We're thinking it's a narrow path for Washington to get there, but give Spencer Carberry all kind of credit. There was tinkering with Ovi in the early going. Is he playing left? Is he playing right? Ovi and his professional approach to the game has kind of, I guess, worked his way through some uncertainty kind of here out of the gate, some tinkering with this roster, this lineup. But you got to give this group a lot of credit. If Ovi's on track, this is the engine that drives this team. If the other elements can kind of coalesce, come together, play to potential, that certainly is possible, a top 8 spot in the East. But Ovi breaking through, and remember, I think you mentioned this, he needs just 30. He needs 38, 37 ties, 38 breaks it. It's not out of the realm of possibility.
But you mentioned some of the tinkering early on, putting him on the right wing. We're so used to seeing him on the left side in the office, the 1T and stuff, and it's almost like the individual accolades at this point, which should take center stage, have taken a back seat to the overall success of the team, which is what we love about this sport. And by doing that, it's almost help propel the individual stuff as well. So it's like everything's working right now.
Which speaks to the ability to communicate, to sell, a particular point, a particular strategy from the coach Carberry to a player, Alex Ovechkin.
Awesome.
He's been fabulous. So, you focus on that part of the conversation as you're kind of tinkering with this roster and Ovi's deployment. But, too, I will make the point, for a lot of high-end superstars, like they don't want you, lifting up the hood and in there tinkering with the carburetor, especially at this late stage in the game.
See what you did? Carberry?
Carburetor. We'll let it play. But it speaks to Ovi's professionalism and your point, the dedication to team, that he's willing to work through that. And it really appears, to the extent that they've solved whatever deployment issue they were focused on, they're coming out the other side of it in pretty good shape.
Yeah, 6-2-0 to start this season. A lot of people thinking last year making the playoffs, not a one-off. This team is for real when it comes to making some noise in the Metropolitan Division. We're going to take a timeout here on NHL Tonight First Shift. When we come back, Philly with a good win last night in Boston, shutting down and shutting out the Bees. Our buddy Steve Kouleas is dropping by to answer the question everybody in Massachusetts wants to know. What is up with the Bruins? We're heading to Cool's Cave next. Welcome back. It is time for week 4 of Cool's Cave with the one, the only Steve Kouleas, our good buddy up there in Canada. Cooley, hope you're doing well. Before we dive into some of the hot button topics across the NHL right now, I know we had you on a couple of times last year on NHL Tonight doing the Cool's Cave. Any updates, improvements? What's the vibe going on in the cave this year, 4 weeks into this season?
Well, I put together a budget to make some improvements, and apparently it didn't get by the misses. So there's a few things here, including the soundproof member, Stu and Jameson on the other side. So right now we're on hold. Hopefully the budget. I think we all have to wait maybe until after early November. Let's see where we are around U.S. Thanksgiving. And then I'll show you if we do some renovations here. You may have noticed a couple pictures have fallen down behind me.
So, yeah, I'm not seeing the Luftman Grimson photo in the background, Cools. And while we're on the topic of finances, have you made the tax deductible renovation argument to the spouse?
That's how I think I'll sell it to her.
Right.
Above her, I mean, if John Tavares is having trouble with his tax situation as it relates to where you get a signing bonus, let's earmuffs on that just so nobody gets in trouble, okay?
All right. Speaking of fixing things, maybe things needing improvement, what's going on with the Boston Bruins right now? Shutout 2-0 against the Flyers last night. This is a topic near and dear to my heart. My family still resides there. They're big Bruins fans, and everybody in the Commonwealth wants to know what's going on with the Bees, Cooley.
They can't score. They're 25th in the league in offense. The defense is, okay, bottom third. They can kill penalties. That's not an issue. But the power play isn't working. You know, you got Zacha with 1. Coyle's got 1. I'm not worried about 63 and 88's been their best player. Poitras hasn't scored yet. I mean, from what I saw, the way they practiced today, Beach is on the first line, Kastelik's on the second line, Kepke's on the third line, and Poitras on the fourth line. I mean, that's a shakeup. These guys got to be better. I mean, whether you think Zacha is a winger or centerman, he's top 6. Coyle's got to be better. You know, yeah, in a perfect world, if you've got 37 and 46, yeah, he's a third line center. Those days are long gone now. They need Charlie Coyle to be a second line center. And the Flyers played a good defensive game and got goaltending, if you can believe it, yesterday. But the Bruins got to pop that bubble. Like, this is, 500 at home, under 500. There's too many stagnant teams in the Atlantic, and it looks like Tampa Bay might be moving on up. Florida's for real. Boston did beat Toronto on Saturday, but you don't want to finish 4th in the division and play one of the Florida teams. So I think right now this has been an ugly October. Oh, yeah, ugly October, scary stuff. It's got to get better. They were already missing a top 6 forward. They need those guys you had on the board there, gentlemen, to step it up.
Cools, no question that, production, offensive production is a major problem for this group. Lowest goals, aggregate goals, really in that division. But let's be clear. On the goaltending side of it, this is really the first kind of moment they've stepped away from that brilliant tandem of Swayman and Ullmark. Is that maybe kind of contributing to a really lackluster start for this group to some degree?
I hope not. I hope that's more mental than anything else. Last year, right, Jameson, they finished 24th in expected goal percentage, 5-on-5 in the league, and right now they're at 23rd. Yeah, these numbers, I'm not worried about Swayman and 900. The league average is 897. 70 goalies have played. The league average is 897. So if you're above the league average like Swayman is right now, having missed camp, I'm okay with it. Korpisalo wasn't the issue. It hasn't been. He has to be at least league average to me. So yeah, they don't have that 1-2 punch. I get that, but that's not affecting the offense. Like that's an excuse in my mind then, Stu. They got to get these guys that we talked about earlier going. Swayman will get his numbers up. But when you're giving up that much 5-on-5, 24th last year, 23rd this year, expected goals for and against, it's been too easy to gain the neutral zone and get into the Bruins zone. And these types of starts, yeah, there's a lot of other teams in there. I'm not sure if I believe. We talked about Ottawa, Detroit, and Buffalo. The Bruins are better than those teams. They want to be with the big boys and give themselves a chance for home ice in the first round. I believe that will still happen. Hey, but we're all worried. And your relatives, Jameson, they're a little worried right now going into November.
As they should be, because I know you were kind of jokingly saying October, ooh, scary, scary. But it is, because look at what happened when you don't get off to good starts. Last year with Edmonton or with Nashville, if you don't go on one of those long, historic type runs, like you may find yourself out of the playoffs come by the end of October.
Yeah, and I think the one thing is it's 2 points in October, right, Stu? It's 2 points in April.
Yes,
it's
they count as much this time of year. Yes, they do.
Yes. And remember the Oilers, 2-9-1, and had to when you fight and claw, you're burning the candle at both ends. You're gonna then go, woo, game 83. Well, we're exhausted. The Oilers were exhausted last year. They were exhausted the year before when they won 8 in a row just to not finish first. I think there's something to be said about putting points in the bank, and the Bruins traditionally have done that under this administration. That's fine. I think November will be better. It better be.
You know, turning our attention to another club, same division in the Atlantic, Cools. Patrick Kane of these Detroit Red Wings, a little wobbly out of the gate, a little slow for Kaner out of the gate, but over the last handful of games, looks like vintage Kaner. You would agree?
Yeah, he's been very noticeable, Stu. Good eye by you. And I think that, and if he would have not hit the post or passed off against Buffalo, it could have been even better. When you look at Kane and what he's done in the last 5 games, there's a spring to his step. Yeah, his birthday's in November. He's going to turn 36. But after surgery last year, he played 50 games, had almost a point a game with 20 goals. Well, if he had 20 goals in 50, I would think if he plays 75 games, he might score 30. And if he scores, 27 more, he gets to the 500 club. Let's be honest, individually, he wants that number. Malkin just got to it. It's a big number. And if he does produce like that, if Tarasenko gets going, we know what they've got in Larkin. I hope that Compher and Kopp can contribute as well. It's about being where they were last year in playoff contention. If it's not, would he welcome a move or not? If it's not there in Detroit, I'm not so sure. I think he's kind of pot committed there, it seems right now. But individually, it'd be great for him to score 500 goals and get to it this year. And if he moves the way he is right now, he's going to give them other options than just DeBrincat, Larkin I mentioned, and hope some of those other guys like Tarasenko can fill the net as well.
When we talk about Detroit, we usually talk about them with the likes of Ottawa and Buffalo. So we can stay in the Atlantic Division for this conversation. Where are the Red Wings in comparison to those other 2 teams? And which of those 3 are ready, do you think, to finally take that next step and could potentially be a playoff team come April?
Well, I think they're all lumped in together. I facetiously called them the Three Stooges earlier in the year.
Mo, Larry, and who's Curly?
That's right. So they have to show me. The one thing about Ottawa is they might not be 8 games under 500 by U.S. Thanksgiving. Might not be. So that's a good sign for them because they traditionally have shot themselves in the foot. I want to say Ottawa because now it's Allmark, and I believe in Stützle. I believe in Brady. Giroux is aging very well. He's had a great start to the season. They always have some forward that's injured, whether it's Norris or Pinto. Now it's Pinto. Norris, if he stays healthy, is good. I'm going to say that it is Ottawa. I like Jake Sanderson big time. I think they've added some other smaller pieces that will work. But I'm not betting on these 3 teams. They have to show it to me. And whoever does finish 5th in that division will put someone on notice in the Metro that you better finish with more points or we might go 5-3. As you alluded to, Jameson in the Atlantic Division this year.
Quick note on Ottawa, just focusing on them. Where have they, if they have, Cooley, to your point, addressed concerns transitioning from last season to this season? Because remember, I think last year kind of helped us highlight or illustrate they're a little weak on the back end and goaltending seemed to have been a concern. Areas that were addressed. Where does Ottawa rank in terms of those 2 sectors of the roster?
Well, I think there's one thing to look at Travis Green and style of play. I'd like to think that he's learned in his stops that Ottawa, we talk about, if you're easy to play against with the Sens have been, if you're more worried about points, apples and cookies, than the 2 points that come at the end of the day, then it won't get there. And this is a work in progress. One game against St. Louis here, or to me, it was the same old Sens in Vegas and in Colorado. They had chances those games to get points. Where you're giving up 5 and 6 goals, yes, to good teams, that doesn't convince me, even though you've improved your defense, you've improved your goaltending, and you've improved your, in theory, style of play. So to me, I'm going to have to really see it over a larger sample size, but it really kind of starts with how you insulate your goaltender by protecting the house, and how Linus Ullmark performs on a team that traditionally has not paid attention to detail like Boston has. He will be better than anything they've had since Craig Anderson, but Travis Green is going to have to be this guy. Spencer Carberry. He's got to be Spencer Carberry in Ottawa if the Sens are serious about getting to 94, 95 points and trying to be a wild card spot.
All right, so if you like the Sens based on goaltending and the addition of Ullmark, then are you planning the parade route right now out in Anaheim? Because Lucas Dostal has been all world to start this year, coming off that 3-1 win last night, 40 saves in the win against the Islanders. He's the best goalie in the NHL right now, and you've got the numbers to back it up.
I can't believe how good he's been. And it's a slow progression for this 24-year-old Czech. He hasn't even played, full seasons. What does he have? 74 career games, career .906 save percentage, but he's exploded this year. He's exploded. Remember, the league average is .897. He's at .943. And get this, in high danger, glorious save percentage of the goalies that have played as many games as he has, he's number 1, and number 2 is Igor Shesterkin. He's 2 percentage points ahead of Igor. Are you kidding me? He's only allowed 14 goals. The Ducks will be better this year, and it asks the question, what happens then with John Gibson? But Lucas Dostal's been a great story. These numbers are Hasek-like. They're not sustainable, even though I try to bring in the Czech reference. I think it's exciting for the future of the Ducks, and there's 70 goalies that have played this year. Look, Stuart Skinner, 67. Jacob Markstrom, 68. Georgiev is 70th. And this kid is number 1. Bravo. Bravo for a great month. You know what? We like chocolate bars up here. Dairy Milk. Give this guy a Dairy Milk for Halloween.
Yeah, and it really does bode well for the organization, or speaks well of the organization when you think about it. And to your point, I think you mentioned this in an early comment, Cooley. His first 3 years, he's splitting time between the AHL and the NHL, seeing seasoning as he goes. Last year kind of shared the load with John Gibson, but now it really looks like this kid is braced to take over the number 1 job, even in a Gibson/Dostal tandem. But the development has just been really steady and deliberate, it would seem from afar, Cools.
Yeah, and we live in a world right now. It's like Jameson texted me. I didn't respond right away. We're all upset, if somebody doesn't answer. But patience is a word that right now nobody seems to have, whether it's with their finance, their time, their texting. This is handled well. This is handled well. And at 24, you can't teach size, 6'2", 6'3", and how he's developed in front of a team that's also growing. They might not jump as far as New Jersey will in the standings, but they should dramatically improve on the disaster that was last year in Anaheim. Good for them. Good for Mr. Dostal.
All right, we got Halloween coming up tomorrow. What's the costume of choice this year in the Cool Cave?
Well, I was going to dress like my old friend Gino Reda. If you remember him from TSN, I got one
Insider
of his old
trading.
blazers.
Yes.
Yes, there you go. But instead, I've got a treat. The prediction is, red light, all Hughes brothers get a point tonight.
I like it.
Oh.
Hey, that happened last December. A couple of goals by Jack and Luke and an assist by Quinn. So maybe do it again.
I wonder what that paid out.
That's... The renovations didn't come in time down at the Cool Cave. Cooley, we appreciate it. We'll talk to you next week, okay?
Thank you, guys.
All right, we got to take a quick time out. We've got much more NHL Tonight First Shift coming up after this. Welcome back to NHL Tonight First Shift. Taking a look at the brothers Hughes here, Jack, Luke, and Quinn. and what they've done so far this season. The first family of hockey in the National Hockey League. It's got to be the Hughes, right?
I would say so. I mean, by virtue of the numbers these young men have posted in their relatively short careers to this point, and not that the Tkachuk brothers have been around all that long either, but, by virtue of number of the brothers, by virtue of numbers that those brothers have, produced, it's just brilliant. I mean, can you imagine being the parents of these boys showing up from night to night, especially on a night like tonight when they're all playing one another? It is just remarkable.
So that's why we're talking about this. The Devils out on the West Coast tonight, taking on the Vancouver Canucks. 10:30 p.m. puck drop. Game 6 of 6 on the slate tonight. And it's brothers Hughes going at it for just the second time in their careers where all three brothers on the ice at one time. From a parent's perspective, that must just be the coolest moment of any parent.
I mean, your loyalties are divided, and it maybe sounds a little bit wishy-washy to say you just want to see each of these three boys do well, but you've got
for a good game.
Exactly, but you've got to appreciate that's where a parent's heart is divided. You really don't fly a flag, a team color at that point. You just want to see your boys do well, fare well. But knowing these Hughes brothers, and that during their childhood, how the competitive nature brings out the best in all of them, that really contributes to them getting to this point. You can bet, J-Mo, that when these three take to the same sheet of ice tonight, and they'll be on the same sheet of ice from time to time, at the same time tonight, they'll be going at it hammer and tong.
Yeah, like we just talked with Cooley about, this is the second time that this has happened for all three brothers to play in the same game.
Yeah.
The last time, last December, Devils won that one 6-5, and like we said, Jack and Luke both had a goal in that one, and Quinn had an assist. So I think if you're a parent of the Hughes brothers, you're thinking that's a win for everybody in the family.
It's an 82-game slog. I recognize for folks out there that, you watch the game from a distance, but from an insider's perspective, from a player's perspective, yes, it's a treasure, it's a treat to be able to play in the NHL, but it is an 82-game slog, and there are lots of dog days in January and February where you're doing your level best to get up for each contest, to get through another road match. But the point I want to make is there are certain games you mark on the calendar, and you can bet these three athletes, J-Mo, circled this one. When it first appeared, the league schedule was released, because they will get up, they will bring their A game for this one, and it'll be a whole lot of fun for both sides.
Yeah, and it makes it even better that both teams are off to decent starts to start this season. You mentioned circling ones. If you're Rick Tocchet, you're probably circling Nico Hischier tonight as far as that pregame scout, because what the captain of the Devils has done in the early goings, 9 goals already. 9 goals. His previous career high is 31. He's on pace for 61. He's tied for the league lead in that department. What's gotten into Nico Hischier in Jersey?
Well, I think it's two parts. It's character for me and determination first and foremost, and then the skill set, this really robust and brilliant set of tools that he has comes right along with that. But we have seen over the course of his career, Nico Hischier has been a steady developer. He takes a step forward each and every year, and now with the moniker, the responsibility of a captaincy that kind of goes along with all that, it's been brilliant to watch. And I think this really goes back 2 seasons in time, since he's kind of taken on that seat, how he has elevated his game and brought the level of play up, the consistency, the maturity of the group around him. This bunch is starting to mimic their captain, but he's a brilliant, fitting athlete to wear the C for this group.
Fun to watch. It'll be fun to watch that game tonight. 10:30 puck drop out in Vancouver. We'll stay in the New York metro area. You want to talk Yankees or Islanders? Because it feels like the Yankees, down 3-1 in the World Series, might have a little more hope, a glimmer of hope at this point than the Islanders and their fan base right now, because coming off that 3-1 loss last night, we talked about Dostal with Cooley and how good he was between the pipes, but it's same old story with this Islanders team, right? They put up 41 shots. They scored just 1 goal. Where is the offense going to come from?
It's a puzzlement to me, because going back really a handful of years in time, perhaps better, the one thing we've been saying, the common refrain about this group has been they defend pretty well. Some seasons better than others. Some seasons they've ridden that pure structure to a rather lofty spot in the regular season finish and even into the postseason.
Get up a goal and then hang on for dear life.
Shut it right down.
And they were good at that.
That was Trotz's last year behind the bench as the the bench boss for these New York Islanders. But again, the point we want to make here, it's been the offense, it's been the inability to be really consistently productive up front. This is a group that really cannot win anything other than a 3-2 hockey game. You've got two, we kind of break lines down into two-player segments, two-player combinations. So through your top six, you are riding your hopes ride on a Bo Horvat, Matthew Barzal combination, line one, Brock Nelson, and Kyle Palmieri as part of that second, two-player block on that second line. But the point I want to make, JMO, is these guys, those four guys I showed you spread across those two lines, they've really got to have, career-type years, the way this group is built, or they've at least got to play to, what has been typical top-end form for them. If this group has any designs, any chance of kind of buttoning down, one of the top 8 spots in the Eastern Conference, but it hasn't gone that way to date. And it'll be interesting to see should this continue, even in Patrick Waugh's rather short tenure behind the bench. Is the finger on the trigger? This has been lose higher. Yeah. How much rope does he have?
I think you said an interesting quote, though, or a couple of key words, how this team was built. Isn't that the issue?
Yeah.
Right? It's how this team was built. It's like in the offseason, the big acquisition was Anthony Duclair, and no knock to him, but he's out right now, so he can't score any goals. And that news, at least from a positive standpoint, not as bad as we once thought. At first, it was very long-term, not season-ending, but now it's just a couple of weeks. So while they wait on him, but he's not the savior going to come back and save the season, is he?
I don't think so. I think if things gel in an ideal way, an optimal way, Duclair could be the kind of guy that brings a little more sizzle up front without question, punches what they need up front. The one other area that you like a tandem, to me, in Sorokin and Varlamov, I think now with
Might be one of the better tandems in the league.
Right, now with the fact that Boston's kind of disassembled the Swayman-Ullmark combination, this could be your best number one, number two combination in the business, though. What the back end could use, and I think this back end defends really, really well. They're really effective, really capable in their own end, but a little offense from the back end. This is what we see from the other contending teams across the NHL, and it's by contrast an area where I think the Islanders kind of pale in comparison. So again, not a lot of sizzle up front. You don't generate a whole lot from the back end either. You might kind of hold water 5-on-5, but this club leaves a little bit to be desired the way they're built present tense.
Taking on Columbus tonight, and maybe years past that was a get-right type game.
Yeah.
Let's give some props to Columbus so far. Coming off that big 6-1 win over the Oilers earlier this week, this team is 4th in the NHL in scoring goals per game, averaging 4.13. This isn't your grandmother's Columbus Blue Jackets anymore. Like, this team is offensive. They're fun to watch. Monahan's having a great season. Kirill Marchenko's having a great season. This team could score goals.
It's really interesting. And I don't think a lot of us really saw this coming, but some of those bright young names that you mentioned appear to be braced to have kind of breakthrough years and really be difference makers for this group. And all that to say, or the context behind all that, remember, regretfully, tragically, JMO, we subtracted one of the most brilliant pieces this organization could offer in Johnny Gaudreau, the tragic loss suffered last summer. But give this group a whole lot of credit for, wading through a circumstance like that. and at the same time finding the focus, finding the determination, finding the maturity at the end of the day to really get out of the gate these first 10 or so games in the way that they have. They're a handful anytime you face them.
All right, we'll see if the Islanders can figure it out tonight. Nashville, Anaheim, the only teams that have scored fewer 5-on-5 goals this season than the Islanders coming into this one. When we come back on NHL Tonight First Shift, after a slow start to the season, it looked like the Avalanche had finally figured it out, but a loss to Chicago and some more injury news. Where does that leave Colorado? Broadcaster Connor McGahey joins us with the answers next. Welcome back. You're watching NHL Tonight First Shift. A big one tonight in Denver at Ball Arena. The Avs playing host to the Tampa Bay Lightning. Don't look now, but the Lightning look like the team that we're accustomed to seeing in the Atlantic Division. One of the top teams, not just in that division, but in the Eastern Conference. 6-3-0, coming off that emotional win over Steven Stamkos and the Preds, returning to Tampa for the first time, taking on an Avalanche team that, they've got some issues going on right there. And we're happy to welcome in a guy who knows a thing or two about the Colorado Avalanche.
About issues? Oh, okay.
No, I wasn't going there. Not yet. Connor McGahey, our good buddy here, voice of the Avs out there on altitude. Connor, look, it's kind of been a up and down season so far for Colorado. Really, really slow start. Then they rattle off 5 in a row and coming off a loss to the Blackhawks, some injuries. Like, where are we at with this team? What's the vibe? Are we okay? Are we treading water? Are we panicking? Where are we at in Colorado?
I think we're always okay because despite the injuries, despite the $26 million out of the lineup that the Avalanche have tonight, for example, if you include Landeskog, if you include Nichushkin, you add Ross Colton, who's got a broken foot. That's just announced today, out 6 to 8 weeks. Miles Wood, probably 7 to 10 days. Lehkonen, Drouin still out. You don't have Landeskog. You don't have Nichushkin. Like I said, the forward group is not as deep as it should be. But you do have 5 of the top 6 scorers. Cale Makar is still there. Mikko Rantanen. You have Nathan MacKinnon, obviously. You're missing Ross Colton, which is unfortunate because he's off to the best start in his career. 8 goals in 9 games at the second he got hurt. A tie for second in the National Hockey League. But I just think that there were so many storylines with Ross Colton that were good because you're missing Lehkonen, because you're missing Nichushkin, because you're missing Landeskog. Who else did you have? You knew that there was potential there, and you were getting the production out of Ross Colton. We talk about Ovi's office. We talk about Kucherov's office. Well, Colton's office was right in between the slots. Middlestat would set him up. Nathan MacKinnon would set him up. One-timer in, 4 goals on the power play, and they were pretty much all identical. So Ross Colton gelled with that top line very nicely. So him blocking a Seth Jones shot is very unfortunate. But as the saying goes, everybody ropes, everybody rides. I think that you still have superstar talent left, which is why they're going to be okay. I think the cavalry is on the way. Lehkonen soon, Drouin soon, Nichushkin soon.
Connor, just sticking with Ross for a second. I mean, and as he goes down, tied for 3rd league-wide. His 8 goals are tied for 3rd league-wide. What did you notice about his game, his approach to the game? Perhaps is it maturity? Is it deployment? Line combinations and who he's being deployed with? Is there something you would point to that really kind of helps explain the spike in his production in the early going?
I think, Stu, the simple answer is that when you're playing with a guy like MacKinnon, Rantanen, Cale Makar, and even Middlestat, who's been a tremendous surprise, maybe not even surprise, but addition to the Avalanche to start the season, ended last season, obviously traded for Bo Byram. I think it's easy to say that anybody with any amount of skill is able to produce when they're on the ice with you. I think what's more accurate is that Ross Colton didn't try to change who he was to play with superstars like MacKinnon or Mikko Rantanen. I think Colton is Ross Colton. I think that skill set actually suited what MacKinnon and Rantanen do on that top line, and I think that's why the production was what it was. And so many guys, when they are asked to be elevated or put in these spots in a top 6 role, they try and change who they are to play with the superstars. Ross Colton didn't do that, which I think is exactly what he should have done, and which is why the production was what it was.
Certainly one of the biggest storylines surrounding the Avs to start this season has been goaltending. Alexander Georgiev, the numbers aren't what they need to be, haven't been where he's been previously in his career. Kaapo Kähkönen making his season debut, his Avs debut, sounds like tonight. What's a successful run here for Kähkönen between the pipes? Like, what is Jared Bednar looking for? Is he just looking for any goalie just to make, keep them in games? Doesn't have to play spectacular, but just kind of give us a chance to win? What are the expectations here between the pipes?
Well, JMO, I think that the magic number for the Avalanche is 4 goals against, which you would think that that's probably the case. But if the Avalanche allow more than 4, they're 0-5. When they allow 4 or less, they're 5-0. So when you're trying to, and the goals against average is right there, and that tells the story. Annunen won 4 games in a row. Georgiev's only win of the season came on home ice against Anaheim in overtime. So I just think you're looking for a tandem. You're looking for 2 who can have a goals against maybe just below 3, and obviously save percentage above 900. That's what you want out of any goaltender. And when you have one of the highest scoring offenses, powered offenses in the National Hockey League, that type of goaltending is going to get you wins, especially when you have the power play clicking like it is right now for the Colorado Avalanche. So I think you're looking for those numbers. Because of the injury situation, you're in a tough spot because you can't carry 3 goaltenders. You don't have the cap space, you don't have the roster spots because of guys being out. So that's what makes the next, I would say, even 5 or 6 days very interesting. Sounds like Justus Annunen will go back in between the pipes on Saturday in Nashville if Jared Bednar's hand was tipped at all this morning. So this is fascinating to see what happens in the next 2 weeks as far as goaltenders go for the Avs.
All right, we look forward to seeing how it plays out. We know the Avs dealing with, some obstacles, some adversity, some injuries. You're battling internet problems, so we appreciate you throwing in that 72-hour AOL disc and sticking with us for a couple of minutes. Enjoy the game.
Hey guys, we're going to be okay. We're going to be okay.
There we go. Okay, on that firework. We're going out on fireworks.
Does he control that?
All right, Connor, we're going out on fireworks. He comes with his own graphics.
I think we just broke the budget. He's coming back.
He comes with his own graphics.
He provides his own features. Unbelievable. We cut him off. He's got to go. When we come back, hey, I don't know what's bigger than that, but some big news pertaining to the business of hockey in the NHL. We'll share it next. Welcome back. Stu, we always talk about, the business of hockey and the league's never been in a better spot. This is kind of proof. The proof is in the pudding. How about this? Sportico just released their 2024 NHL franchise valuations. For the first time ever, all 32 valued over $1 billion. How good is that?
I must confess, this really caught me on my back foot. I mean, I would have thought there were, a good half-ish clubs in the league that were north of the $1 billion mark. I would have had no idea that all 32 clubs are north of that number. That's really astonishing.
Well, how about this? Last year, only a quarter of the league was worth over $1 billion. 5 years ago, only 5 teams in the NHL were worth $1 billion. So it just shows the unbelievable growth that we have across the National Hockey League.
The growth, the solid management. You've got to give the league a really, a hearty tip of the hat for all they've done to kind of shepherd our sport along this path of growth. And you've got some sharp ownership and some sharp management in all of these different markets, making their clubs competitive. And two, let's think about it. We just had a club relocate, kind of middle of the summer with almost no notice on that.
Worth $1.2 billion.
Arizona to Utah, Salt Lake City, Utah, to become the Utah Hockey Club, a moniker to be rolled out later. But that group as well is north of that mark.
It's the league, it's the owners, and it's the players too, right? The product on the ice. It's like we said, the NHL has never been in a better place.
Remarkable.
And the trajectory only goes up. This was fun. We should do it again sometime.
Let's do.
Thanks for watching NHL Tonight, First Shift. We'll see you next time.